And there he is. There he is. How are you?
There he is.
Hi, Matthew. Hi,
there
Steve.
He is. That's a bit rude to start the show with that.
There he is. No.
There he is.
How you doing, Matt?
Hello. Hello, Ben.
Hello, Matthew. You look. Are you in hell? It looks like that's where you are.
I know. Look. There's the demon, right? But he's got a bit of a raw butthole or something going on by here. But he's being he's being
Wait a
challenged.
sec. Wait a sec. But you got
Look,
reposition your head there a little.
Challenged by the light is trying to sort of take on the demons. But that's yeah.
Well, we do try to do that, don't we?
Yeah.
Well, Alex is not going to be joining us this evening. Well, he might pop in a bit. He's poor guy's still at work, but he's a hard worker. Not really, but yeah. But how are you guys doing?
Great, mate. Great, Steve. Thanks.
Great.
Great to be back on the show. It's really, really, really good. Thanks for inviting us.
Well, it's good to have you again, Ben, and of course, Matt. Always great to have both of you on.
Nice
And well, the first time to having you both on at the same time, I think, isn't it?
But we've been on. I'm not sure. I've been on lots of shows with Matt. I've been on lots of shows with Matt. Maybe not this one.
Have we synchronized being on?
Yeah.
Not this one, perhaps.
But I hear women do this, don't they? They really synchronize being on. Yeah.
So Simon says there's no such thing as aliens or UFOs or whatever.
I saw that. Yes, Mr. Saint, the Saint himself, Roger Moore. Or was it the Ian Ogilvy one? I don't know, but
Simon, touch your head.
he may change his mind by the end of this program. We shall see, but you never know.
Stand on one leg.
So, well, let's start. I mean, the U.S. Congress had a nice, polite hearing on you. What is it? UAPs now?
That's what they're calling them at the moment.
That's what they're calling it now. Yes, and well, I was telling Ben, Matt, I just finally got to watch the whole thing, and I know you did a watch party on the Secret Vault, didn't you?
Yeah, he did it first, and it
We
gave
both
me an
did,
idea. I thought this is cheap television. I don't have to work hard to do, so I thought I'm going to do it as well, and I'm going to milk this puppy for as much as I can. Let's just do it.
I've never tried to milk puppies before. My image was a cow, but I kind of did it for the same reason. Although I actually did watch it live. I was actually on a coach to London because I was meeting Colin Wolford. We were actually, believe it or not, we were going to a skeptics meeting, and I promised I'd meet him there. I wasn't going to cancel that. So I watched it on my mobile phone on the coach. It was actually very, the coach has limited Wi-Fi. You can only have so much data. But I thought, am I going to have to, is it going to last for me to watch this? But believe it easily did. It was 1 hour, 31 minutes or something. Not long at all. And then they had a break, and then they shut the doors, locked them, and they had the Sub Rosa second half, which the public's not allowed to see, and I suspect that's where the really interesting stuff came up, or at least maybe even not all of that.
So, well, let me get both your takes on it. We'll, start with you, Ben. Like, what was your overall take of the hearing?
To be honest, my hopes were not high. They couldn't really be undercut, actually, and it was probably a little bit better than I expected for that reason. There was a couple of bits I didn't expect, because, of course, this is not the first time there's been hearings in government to do with UFOs. In fact, the United States of America in particular actually has dedicated a lot of time and energy to this subject. Other countries have done similar things. In fact, there have been hearings in other countries related to this. In the modern age, probably they've overtaken the US in that respect. However, the US really have done nothing official now for over 50 years. When the Condon Committee disbanded, I think in 1968 or 69, shortly before the closure of Project Blue Book, that was really the last official dealings the US ever had with the UFO issue until that moment. And to be honest, they haven't come forward in terms of their public relations exercise and how they deal with it. They haven't really advanced very far. A lot of the same topics came up that were discussed back in the 60s. We don't know what they are. They might be aliens, but they're not aliens. That kind of these lots of contradictory things, lots of dancing around the elephants in the room, the very obvious pitfalls with the idea. There was several of the panel members on the committee when they were grilling these two guys, Bray and Moultrie, from the, what's it called now, AIMSOG. It's changed its name 3 times.
That's the official name now, AIMSOG or whatever.
Yeah, it was
great name.
It went Project Blue Book shut, and then it the Congress, the actual White House lied in 2011 when Grant Cameron put out his White House petition. And they said, well, we've not been studying UFOs at all. We have no interest in them. Then it was revealed that from 2007 to 2012, they had ATIP. This then basically rebranded as UAPTF, and now it's AIMSOG. Don't ask me to spell that or what that means. I can't even remember. It's typical bureaucracies. Hello, Rhiannon. How are you doing? Someone I know in chat.
Yeah.
So, and they nowadays basically said, well, they just call them UAPs instead of UFOs. And the reason is, of course, because they want to distance themselves from people like us, so they can, they want to see themselves as different to the so-called loonies, how they regard us. And ironically, the term UFO was coined for that very same reason by the Robertson panel in 1952. This was like an early version of what we've just seen. It convened in late 1952 to 1953 to address the problem of UFOs, actually congregating over the U.S. Capitol in July of 52. And they decided not to talk about flying saucers and spaceships. Instead, they coined the term UFO because it sounded more scientific. And then, of course, we loonies culturally appropriated that. And so they have to come out with another acronym, which is UAP, which, of course, we are going to now culturally appropriate. So they'll probably invent a new word at some point. But generally, I mean, maybe Matthew will want to give his opinion, and I'm not going to go on and ramble on too long.
Absolutely,
but I'll go into more details about what I thought were the good sides of it in a minute.
Go ahead, man.
Yeah, I thought it was a bit tongue-in-cheek in bits, which I think devalued the subject. I think that they acted like they were just starting to look into this now, which I think was disingenuous, because we all know that they've been doing this continuously. If they haven't, then, well, what happens if somebody flies into airspace? What if an aircraft comes in? What if somebody's testing missiles on your borders? Well, you don't know any of that stuff, do you? Because you don't have things like radars, and you don't have aircraft doing surveillance, and you don't have satellites. So I guess you'd never really be looking for any of those types of incursions or anything of that nature, would you? Which would also be how you investigate UFOs. But I guess no, only since a couple of years ago you started taking an interest in this stuff. Yeah, but of course, that's bullshit. We all know it's bullshit. They've been doing this stuff, all the time. They just don't like to talk about it. So they're saying, we don't want to talk about the past. They wouldn't discuss historical events where there have been actual physical interaction cases where aircraft have been disabled, missile systems have been disabled. They wouldn't even go near that. They were like, no. From when we've been dealing with it, in the last few years, we've just got a few bits of videos and lots of questions. And it's like, yeah, come on, pull the other one. So, it's literally, I mean, I could, yeah. It's like asking a bunch of pedophiles to kind of investigate a case of like pedophilia, in court.
Well, I mean, look at
they're
that.
all pedophiles on the jury, and it's like, you're gonna.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to put it in graphic terms like that, but I mean, it's like you got a bunch of criminals who are now going to investigate things, and they're all criminals, and they're talking about whether or not they should investigate criminal stuff.
Well, look at what was his name? The defense general dude. What was his name? They were going on about, well, we hear that you go to these conventions but you don't dress up. And, downplaying, the whole fact that, wow. But at the same time, he's saying, well, I'm just like regular folk here. I go to these conventions too. I love this stuff. I think this is awesome. It
was definitely, they were mocking him, weren't they?
Oh,
I mean, obviously they said it was just breaking the ice, and Moultrie, to his credit, he kind of like played along, and he just said, yeah. I do that. But obviously there's deep down, I think there is still the giggle factor. It's still there. You can't undo 70 years of propaganda in just 5 years.
No.
But this is the public approach, you see. Behind the scenes, there isn't the giggle factor. They deal with it very seriously. I mean, they themselves are the ones coming forward with this information now. So why are they laughing it off? It's like, oh yeah, we got this kind of stuff. We're looking into it, but we don't take it that seriously. But we're going to investigate it. But hang on. You're the military, and when you're telling us this is kind of a bit of a joke to you, is it? So what are you investigating it for then?
This contradiction
is this for?
This contradiction existed going back to 47. and Kenneth Arnold. It's literally, they've said this. They've said, well, they've even had like various big wigs like John Sanford and these other people coming up on TV saying, no, there's nothing here to it. We're not concerned about this. There's no national security threat here. These things are just things we don't know. And if we got closer to them, we'd be able to identify them. We're sure of that. And at the same time, and then of course they make a joke out of people in various ways as the culture progresses. The latest one is, of course, the X-Files music playing in the background. But then, as Matthew points out, I mean, the US military, which is by far the largest and most well-funded military organization on Earth, really has this money, the huge budget that the defense has, and the resources and technology that go into it means that the idea that there's large numbers of objects in the sky above the other country that could not be identified is really preposterous. And to this extent that they do these things, and the fact they've invested so much money, they had, like I said, entire committees meeting. They had Project Sign, they had Project Grudge, they had Project Blue Book. They brought in J. Allen Hynek, and his statements on this subject are absolutely crucial because he made exactly this point. He was brought in to investigate. He investigated and said, "Oh, maybe some of them are actually aliens," and they said, "Wrong answer, J.A." And nonsense of him. He ended up like rebelling, and he wrote a book about it.
One take. Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
No. Go ahead, Matt.
One thing I noticed straight off the bat, which was like, maybe a lot of people wouldn't have picked up on this because they were just fascinated by the whole subject. But being somebody who's studied ufology, and Ben would probably, the elephant in the room, the immediate elephant in the room, turn it on. And then it's like you've got the Director of Intelligence, Deputy Director of Intelligence for the Navy. Well, where's the Air Force? Where's the Air Force? Air Force have got the radars. Air Force have got the spaceborne surveillance. Air Force have got the over-the-horizon radars. But they brought in the Navy's intelligence department to deal with this. Now, a lot of people say, well, what does that mean? A lot of people have said for many years that the Navy has been heavily in charge of the big picture with UFOs. And even though you might have lots of investigations and the Army talking about Roswell and the Air Force talking about certain cases, it's always, they say, been the Navy that really holds the cards for some strange reason. What does that mean?
It was pretty much them that came forward too. Earlier about some of these sightings and the encounters that they had. And they made no bones about it either. I mean, they were up in front, accordingly. But I mean, you don't hear anything. I don't know. Have you heard anything from any of the other installations, like the Army or anything else? Nothing.
No, this is a question that was raised when the original UAPTF report was released, because there was literally no input from any of the US Air Force. We know that the US Air Force does have its encounters because witnesses are speaking out about who are serving the US Air Force, and there's even been, there have in the past been some certain various moves, such as Project Blue Book itself was a US Air Force operation. However, the fact that the Navy's involved could be to do with the connection with the sea, because a lot of UFOs actually seem to emerge from the sea. I mean, this is not just an American situation, but this is probably something that's been observed by independent witnesses, and probably the officialdom has got involved with this, that they tend to fly in from the sea. They're often seen coming in and out of the sea when they become USOs, unidentified submerged objects.
But there's been the thought of these underwater bases for years too. I mean, the possibility of those, Ben.
Well, if you wanted to hide and you had the technology to do so, supposing you were visiting this planet and you had the technology to go deep under the sea without all the cumbersome pressure armor that humans have to have when they go down in submarines and diving suits, and you have that technology to do it, it's the perfect place. It's on our planet, and it's completely invisible from the land, and it's almost inaccessible. Only a handful of people in history have gone below about 10,000 feet into the sea. Less than 1% of the Earth's ocean bed has been explored. Yeah, it's the perfect place if you're able to do so. It's one of the perfect places to go. Another is the dark side of the moon, or the far side of the moon. Far Side is more scientific. The other's a good album by Pink Floyd, but it's I think it's 10 1.81 million square miles of real estate, facing away from the Earth permanently. It's not dark; it has sunlight. It has phases too, like the near side. But it's one of the few places in the universe which is completely invisible from the Earth's surface for a reason other than sheer distance.
Mhm.
Yet it is right next door in cosmic terms. If you're just, I'm just speculating on what it'd be like if I was visiting from a distant planet. And despite what the saint said, there are ways of traveling vast distances across the universe without going breaking the light barrier and things like that. So I'm just wondering, you'd probably like to find alien forward operating bases in those locations, the sea and the far side of the moon.
Here's a crazy question for you, Matt. The likelihood of crop circles underwater.
Well, I suppose maybe in an octopus's garden, they would, making these little shapes. So.
Land Roamer says wormholes. I mean, anything's possible, right? Anything.
How many of you seen the film? It's a new film just came out called A Terror in the Sky.
No, I haven't seen that yet. No,
I think I have. Yeah.
I interviewed two of the guys who were on it on my own show, and I watched it, and I think it's very important because there is actually they won't be drawn into speculation, but it's basically a big sky watching operation in the area where the UAPs were seen by the Nimitz, and they detect what looks like some kind of strange hole in the clouds, and there's lots of what looks like little tic tacs in it, and they keep appearing and disappearing as if. I mean, I don't know, but if there was something like a wormhole or portal or something, and it was there, that's what you would see. You would see something like that.
Yeah.
Have they found a way to fold space, as it says in Dune, to skip these long distances from distant areas of the universe through a shortcut, the Einstein-Rosen bridge, or even come from a parallel universe, which basically would move the same way?
Yeah. Well, I'm still fascinated with the submerged aspect of UFOs, and the fact that, again, been bringing up the fact that we, the ocean, our waters have been what percent has been explored?
Very little.
Very little.
You've got to go down in a special submarine.
Yeah,
very deep diving submarine.
So I mean, and we could even talk around, even more so around the Antarctic.
Oh yes,
right?
The poles. Yes,
the poles, especially
Antarctica.
And the possibility, and let's think about this for a bit. The possibility that there is, in fact, maybe some sort of underwater base, perhaps.
If it was there, then it's very unlikely people would ever find it. I mean, very unlikely indeed. That's humans would ever find it.
Let's even go further and say, Matt, these things have been here for thousands of years, and have came and gone without us really knowing.
Well, there's people talk about places like Mount Shasta, where they believe that there's an interdimensional aspect to this, so that these things change space so they can go inside physical objects and go into the earth and go into hills and mountains, and maybe they're interdimensional. Maybe they're in a different dimension and they just appear to us. Sorry. So there's a possibility that it could be time travel. Some people have talked about that maybe this is us in the future sending back these craft to the past. And that's a possibility. Maybe in the future they're interested in seeing events that have happened in the past and like watching them, observing them, in the same sort of scenarios you get like from Star Trek, where it's kind of hands off, don't change the past, but you can observe it. And maybe they're not supposed to be seen, but somehow they get seen. Maybe they're not meant to be seen. A lot of UFO stuff, and certainly the abductions, take place at night. And you have to wonder whether or not night is the preferred time to kind of get away with things. You won't be seen. So
So okay. Sorry, Matt. Ben. Go ahead.
I was just going to add that this is an important point, because UFOs don't behave like our spaceships or our objects. I mean, obviously they do have a physical presence. They can do things like leave footprints. They have the ability to touch and to interact in a sensual element, in a sensual way with ourselves.
Mhm.
Yeah, they also have this ethereal element to them. They can, like, as I say, just disappear and appear. Mount Shasta is that where James Gilliland's ranch is? Is it near there? Is that Mount
Well,
Shasta?
I think it's Arizona, isn't it?
Arizona.
I was thinking of
Yeah.
a different. Yeah, he's in a different part of the country, but people who go to the Isetti Ranch observe the same things, which is a major sky watching festival area, and they just go in. They just seem to. Even there's some people they seem to disappear into the ground, but they could just be vanishing from our perceptive part of our universe. Maybe they
I,
found the way to do that.
I was watching stuff like UFOs going towards a volcano, but then they sort of disappear. And are they going in to the volcano, actually in through the side of it? And I mean, reports from like West Wales, from Stack Rocks, off the West Wales coast, and they were saying that these UFOs would just pop out of the rock and then
Well,
fly off.
we got the right person in the chat, because Rhiannon actually lives in that area and collaborated with me on a film about that very subject. And yeah,
Even
that's
e-
weird. That was because
even the Brown Mountains in the Carolinas are same thing. You have these reported UFOs coming and going, entering and exiting the mountain itself.
are they? Is it like a physical thing? Like this is what Rhiannon and I were asking about Stack Rocks. Is there literally a doorway, a hidden secret passageway, which leads down into some kind of underground caves where the aliens live, Dulce style, or is it, as Matthew was saying, there's some? It seems to be there's a Stargate, for want of a better word, to use another term, opens up and these aliens come in and out of it.
Well, I know with the
Interesting.
Brown Mountain that there was an area where they claim where they had seen these UFOs exiting and entering a doorway of sorts. And of course, you can't you can't obviously notice anything other than rock, but you do see an engravement, and it looks kind of odd. So I mean, does this thing open up, or like you said, is there some sort of Stargate? I mean, who knows? I mean, go
Well,
ahead, Ben.
you can. I think obviously that visiting the actual location where these things happen is the answer, and very often these happen in very difficult places. For example, Stack Rock. Stack Rock is actually quite close to the shore. It's only a couple of hundred yards off the shore. Yet it's a private property. It's owned by the hotel. Ironically, where some of the main witnesses to the 1977 flap happened. At the moment, the hotel's under new management, so I don't know if you'd get permission to visit it. But if you do just find solid ground there, and you've got to ask yourself, is there another thing going on? Because like two separate witnesses were watching this thing at Stack Rock, because there was a farm called Ripperston Farm where there was a lady who lived there called
Mhm.
Pauline, and there was Rosa, this lady who lived in the hotel, and they were communicating. They had like a network to watch these things go in and out of the sea. They often came from the sea. They often came in from these rocks. Yeah, so it's an interesting. But that'd be an area of research. That'd be a very, very good area of research, I think.
Ben Rihanna says,
Right.
or are they making people hallucinate and seeing them entering rocks, mountains as a kind of screen memory? I mean, hey,
That's a deeper down the rabbit hole even, but
yeah,
that's a possibility. Reeves, hey Reeves, how you doing? Reeves is here.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's like that's another possibility. I mean, this is another element of the UFO phenomenon. As I said, they have this. They are definitely physical in the sense that, as I said, they can interact on a tactile level with our universe. Yet they can do things like alter human perception and mental processes. A lot of people who have like abductions and things like that, there's absolutely no doubt about they have the ability to control human minds, and it could up to and including various kinds of screen memories. And the famous one is like when people see owls in their bedroom, where owls, the bird, wouldn't normally go into someone's bedroom, things like that.
I mean, we have to, like somebody mentioned in chat there, and I mean, this is the way I've always thought about the paranormal and UFOs. Period. You have to think outside the box. You can't think how we are. I mean, you have to accept the fact that there's technology beyond our comprehension, and these UFO or whatever these wherever they're coming from harbor that kind of technology. And some of it, is it carbon based? Is it like, if is it even material? Is it, are we thinking non-physical here even?
This is sometimes there is this non-physical element, which things can just vanish into thin air and come back out like ghosts do. They just pop in and out of existence, it seems. But they do have a physical side to them, which is like there's several. Like I said, they can leave footprints. They can touch and things like that. And there's the strange case of things like implants and material that's been collected from various locations that has been studied by people like the Battelle Memorial Institute and by Bob Bigelow's organization that actually was contracted to ATIP.
Yeah.
Funny enough, the committee actually, some of the committee members actually asked some really good questions, and they on these sort of like very obvious subjects, as if I think they've been doing their homework. Some of them, especially Mr. Gallagher, he was very good. He asked a good question. When was it? He asked about things like the Malmstrom Air Force Base incident. Do you know the thing I mean?
There you go. Rihanna has something else as well.
I'll just find my notes. But, yeah, and it mentions the Wilson memo. Yeah, in the Malmstrom Air Force Base. Hey, hi, Rihanna.
Oh, Matt, you're muted.
Sorry, yeah. Sorry. They didn't want to go back in time, they said, to discuss awkward and sort of inconvenient cases which have been very well documented. They just wanted to stick to this kind of small gamut of things that they've got, a lot of which they won't even show you what they've got. They go in, oh, we've got more about this, but we'll talk later in the secret talks, So they kind of, we're your investigators. You can trust us. They even, like, I believe at one point, were kind of mocking UFO organizations. On the one hand, they said, oh, we're very happy that we've worked with UFO organizations, but in general, UFO people are kind of like not trustworthy. They were saying things like that. And it's like, well, hey, I know some people who fight wars who say that there's weapons of mass destruction there, but, we won't have to talk about trust now, will we? It's like trust when it's on a level of like, mass lies. You're supposed to believe your government, but you can't believe UFO researchers. I'm like, yeah. So
Some people...
there are a lot of these cases where things have been influenced. Aircraft have been lost, disappeared completely. These are not the cases they want to talk about. They're like, no, we're only going to go forward from a couple of years, and we're going to go, we're going to talk about what happens from now. And I have a problem with that.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, realistically, but people who are watching this that really don't have a clue will really think that they're authentic in saying, look, we're taking this seriously. And I mean, sure, they might be taking it seriously in terms of are their bases being under threat, or are they threatened? But when it comes to telling the American people, in this case, the truth, I think that's just a bunch of bull.
By the way, it's not Amber Heard slime material I'm doing here. This is snuff. Yeah. I haven't got a I just need to blow my nose, folks. Except I'm not blowing, I'm sniffing.
Yeah. He sniffs snuff. He's very posh on that. It's astonishing that they were so coy over these very obvious questions. And obviously, I was thinking about these people like Gallagher. I mean, where did they get their information? They must have just started doing their own research about behind the scenes.
Mhm.
And then they decided to grill these people, AIMSOG, whatever they're called, these two guys, Moultrie and Bray. And Gallagher came straight out and said, well, what about the Maelstrom Air Force Base incident? And they, the idea is, well, it was a long time ago. It was 1967. We don't go back that far. Well, what's the point then? What's the point of, if they're not going to? Yeah, this was something that Project Blue Book, kind of didn't get to grips with, and now they've come along, and their intention and the purpose is to assess the threat caused by UFOs. And contrary to popular belief, the word threat is actually not something we need to be too concerned about, because in the parlance of military strategy, it doesn't mean something you automatically shoot at. It just means something that might cause problems for you. And if lights can appear above a nuclear missile launch facility and start switching the missiles off, which is what happened, Captain Robert Salas talks about this, then that is, technically speaking, a threat. If it can neutralize your ballistic missile deterrent, then you're in big trouble, whatever it is.
But let's be honest here. Even if it is a threat, what can they possibly do anyways?
Well, they tried shooting at some of them above Washington when the skies were full of UFO lights all across the top, and they were shooting at them. So they take them fairly seriously. But of course, this AIMSOG doesn't want to look at interesting stories like that. They only want to look at, like, oh, we've got a bit of video footage, but we're not going to tell you. We're not going to tell you about all the other data we've got surrounding this case.
And let's talk about that footage.
Exactly.
Let's talk about that footage that they showed.
Well, you see that the real interesting stuff is coming from the amateur independents now. People like the team that put together A Tear in the Sky, that basically went to the same location using their own equipment. Some of it they'd invented themselves, and they got far better results. You can bet the Navy is holding this stuff back. They're very similar stuff back, probably maybe even better stuff. But sorry, Steve. What did you say?
Well, the evidence, the footage
that they showed was not
you
very,
know,
not amazing.
like the
the
night vision goggle crap. I mean the flashing triangle, and they're basically saying, one guy saying, well, it was just the night vision shooting through and going to the cam, and that's causing the flashing and all that kind of shit.
I don't like agreeing with Mick West, but he actually did call this one correctly. That's from the USS Russell. And they'll talk about, that really is low hanging fruit. And then they showed that other, and they had another video shot from an aircraft cockpit, and I thought, oh great, we've something brand new we've not seen before. And it was just an encounter with some white object, which it was so fleeting they couldn't even pause the video in the right spot. They always had
maybe silver even, but because it looked sort of reflective. But I mean, they didn't, as you said, they didn't know how to line up the video and press play. And you're thinking, did you practice this before you came in? And what about slowing it down and zooming it in so we can have a better look? I mean, these people are sort of coming. It seems like they're saying, trust us, we're doing an investigation. And here we are on Windows Media Player, and we can't even line the footage up, and we haven't got any enhancements. But listen to us and trust us. We're the Navy. We've got all that. Really? I could have done an enhancement on that within half an hour, and I could have stabilized that object and had it the whole size of the image, not like a portrait video phone thing down the center with this thing that goes whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. It's like I would have slowed it down. I would have made it full screen, and you could have seen what you were looking at. No, apparently that's slightly beyond their pay grade, or are they just taking the piss?
That's it. Exactly. That's it.
Just we've got to come here. Let's just do it. Let's make it as shit as we possibly can. Giggle a bit, and then get this over with.
I mean, screwing around with trying to stabilize it and trying to capture the image that what are we looking at here? What am I looking at here?
Yeah.
Honestly, I just wanted to turn it off there. I'm like, seriously?
It's embarrassing.
Come on.
That was really, I did think to myself, I asked myself the same questions that Matt just did. And indeed, it was actually enthusiastic amateurs who actually did manage to get hold of that video and then process it in the correct way. And it literally did take half an hour for them to get a really great shot of the object. And it appears to be some kind of structured silver or white object. Not very clear, distant, but it's still something. And indeed, but it's not as good, actually, some of the stuff that's come out through like the Tic Tac and And the other footage, the go fast and the gimbal and things like that, it's not even as good as that. Yet
No.
that's all they could bring to this hearing. I
Well,
think it's been set up to fail.
The Gimlin footage. I mean, like you had a guy who 4K'd the goddamn thing and stabilized it frame by frame. So you're watching this thing. He's like, wow. You know, it's incredible what somebody can do when the task is put to them and they have the passion or the money. Well, the money to do it. You know, why can't they do it? Why can't they do it with this UFO footage? Exactly.
They've got the damn money. I mean, for goodness sake, the U.S. Department of Defense. I mean, its actual budget is higher than the entire exchequer of about 150 nations on Earth. That one department's budget alone is higher than the entire exchequer. Now, for goodness sake, what's that money going towards? What are they being paid so much to do by the American taxpayer?
Yeah, one of the people, Simon Templar, is saying that he believes it's probably just 10 nukes with rubbish software that crashed. However, you could be right, but there is a pattern which goes over a long period of time where nuclear installations, including power stations, seem to have a higher proportion of unusual lights, and it seems like there's something going on there. So I would imagine, I mean, you look at Bentwaters, the incident there. The one thing the base commander doesn't want to talk about, but it's the elephant in the room, is the fact that the nuclear weapons, because they didn't have nuclear weapons on the base, got interfered with by beams of light which were shining down from UFOs into the bunkers, and it interfered. This is a second event, and there have been other events, So you're not talking about a one-off here. You're talking about maybe these UFOs, whatever they are interested in on nuclear or military stuff.
I myself took a photograph of a UFO near a nuclear base. Now, I wasn't actually photographing either the UFO or the base. I was just photographing the view. I was hiking in Scotland, and this was in 1998. And it's only when the photograph came out, I was using one of those old fun cameras. It's only when it came out I saw a strange object in the actual print above the base, which was actually the Trident. It was actually RN80 Coolport, the Trident storage facility. So that's true. And also, Captain Salas has written a book, and he's done lots of lectures about what he was involved with. That is he was actually involved with the nuclear deterrent, and the missiles are actually specially designed, including their software. Even in the 60s, they had some of the best computers around at that time, and the kind of shutdown those missiles actually experienced was one that should not be possible. For all 10, occasionally you might get one missile that will break down. For all the 10 of the missiles in his particular flight, this area, these missiles that were under his particular launching facility management, that should not be possible, he said. It's beyond coincidence to have. He doesn't even remember even 2 missiles breaking down like that at once normally. So something odd was definitely going on there, and it was connected to the red light that appeared above the facility, I believe.
So you roll out this hearing, and this of course this is Congress, so I mean it's a different thing. But I mean, if you're going to roll out a hearing on UAPs, UFOs, whatever, after 50 odd years, I mean, how would you guys go about doing it? What would you guys seriously include? Obviously, without giving away too much sensitive information or aspects to it. I mean, what would you guys, how would you guys sort of structure it?
If it was us doing it rather than them.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if I was going for some sort of public disclosure, I would be giving a little bit more than just one tic-tac UFO type incident.
Yeah.
I would be giving a little bit more. I mean, there's supposedly been lots of even film footage filmed from gun cameras, and I mean, there's a supposed event where a UFO came down and landed on a base right in front of a load of cameras that were filming. So there were multiple cameras, and you'd have had film cameras filming these things, all the film taken away. I would love to see some of that stuff. I would love to see what's going on at Area 51.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I just wonder if they're drip feeding because they're so far ahead with the technologies that we've got, that if it is our stuff and it's so black and hidden away, they themselves are starting to get slightly embarrassed, because I mean, we're not just talking 50 years ahead, of technology. We're talking like, this is 2022, yeah?
Yep.
So we're talking 72 years ahead of 1947, when a lot of this stuff was starting to sort of happen. Yeah. So we're talking, are they keeping stuff that would be like 40, 50 years, 60, 70 years ahead that they've been keeping quiet for that amount of time? Maybe somebody's saying, like, I mean, come on. What are we going to tell people? We've got UFOs. We've invented this stuff. Like, maybe by the next century. Are we actually going to tell them we've got UFOs maybe in 100 years' time? Maybe
Exactly.
we'll admit it, It's like, it's ours. What are we going to tell these people? You can't keep lying to people for this amount of time.
That issue actually is it goes beyond the whole UFO issue. It goes into area of energy generation and things like that, which could be traced back to the late 19th century. Nikola Tesla, for example, some of his inventions from the 1890s still classified today, and I think they will put a stop to, because because of the economic impact of letting just people have as much energy as they wanted. And it's the connection to the UFO issue is that if these objects, I believe they are craft of some kind, are obviously not on unleaded four-star. I mean, they're using something similar. They're using some kind of propulsion system that doesn't involve putting fuel in a tank, things like that, things you can sell, things that people have to buy, things which you can ration and control in order to control society.
You're saying they use the higher octane stuff, the expensive fuel.
Whatever it is, I'm sure everyone will want it in their tank.
Well, look at was it Bob Lazar? Bob Lazar in the what was it, in the 80s, 90s, where he with his car, he had like a Camaro or a Trans Am that he retrofitted with hydrogen, I believe it was.
He was the inventor, yeah. He was,
and go ahead. Sorry, go Ben.
I was just going to say that, to your question of what I would do if I was in this position, if I was running this show, I would say, let's just do disclosure with a capital D. Let's give the people, let's go public with the information we have. This includes things such as decisive physical evidence, such as the Roswell spaceship, whatever that might be. I'd just say, let's just come clean with it. As Matthew said, it's just really the cover up itself is becoming its own burden, and its own pathology. And it's, in a sense, the cover-up now has become the problem rather than protection from any problem, even if there is some benefits to it, which I doubt. The possible benefits would be, well, it goes back to the old Brookings Institute report of 1960, social upheaval, things like that. Well, I think we have to risk that. I mean, we have to risk the social, political, economic impact of disclosure, because if we don't, I mean, we either take that risk and we play that card. I'm talking as if I was a politician now, which I'm not. We either take that risk and we play that card, or this situation just drags in and this hole gets deeper and deeper and deeper. Let's end it now. Let's roll the dice, I'd say.
Wasn't there a Chinese scientist who sort of disappeared, a female scientist who disappeared, into the system? Because, when you invent something that has military applications, or could be, earth altering, like everything could change if you bring this out. I mean, the government come along and they literally say, you now work for us, shut up, otherwise this is getting shut down. We'll shut you down. Your heart will stop beating. We'll shut that down too.
Ling actually did die a few months ago. I mean, she was,
did she?
There was nothing. I don't think there's anything suspicious, but she did disappear a few years before she died. I mean, she was doing a contract work for the US DoD, and she just vanished. And her friends didn't know where she was. Eventually, a friend managed to find a phone number for her, and they called her, and she did answer, but she just said, "I can't talk to you. Sorry, I'm doing classified work for the US." And considering that her area of expertise was in this kind of 0-point energy field and things like that, anti-gravity. I know Andrew Johnson has done a lot of work on that. I don't know all the details, but I think that's a bit odd. She's in this field study, then she just vanishes, and none of her usual friends can talk to her, things like that. And then she dies.
And Professor Simon was ranting the other day on because he's very interested in UFOs. He was going on saying plasma is the answer. It's like, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people who've told me stories about the ability for the military to generate three-dimensional objects that aren't physical, but kind of can simulate aircraft and fly near other aircraft and appear on radar like multiple aircraft, but not just on radar, physically appear there, on. So are they experimenting with kind of projection technology? And I wonder, because I mean, I saw a UFO that was the size of a village, and a little red ball of light went up into it, and then it shot up at incredible speed. And you say, well, you couldn't do that because anyone inside there would get crushed by the acceleration. They would literally be jelly on the floor. So are they playing with fields that negate gravity so that you can do incredible accelerations, or was I seeing some form of projection? And therefore there's no mass because it's a projection. You can just whiz it around the sky as much as you want because it's a projection.
Well, if that were the case,
if
that were the case, there'd be several questions associated with it. Firstly, what's the purpose of it, and what purpose would it be
to
making
fool
these
the enemy?
projections? Well, it's funny enough. Like it could be some kind of psyop, psychological warfare operation. Or it could be it could have some political, economic motive. Paul Krugman, actually, he was a Nobel Prize winner in economics. He very famously wrote an article, which I've just been reading it before I came on the air. He put it out in 2011. It was a while ago, but he said that an alien invasion or an alien threat would be the best thing to stimulate the economy. He said it would create fiscal stimulus. In other words, it would allow the government to spend lots of money on things. But they
probably get more viewers than the Amber Heard trial.
If anything to get more viewers than that, I'd be glad. I really, really could. But another question, of course, is its behaviour. I mean, if it is some kind of psyop, what the purpose is of the psyop? Is it what Paul Krugman says? Is it that they're planning some kind of like massive, the last card that Carol Rosin said, to bring in the New World Order? They can create a fake alien threat, which will then we can all unify in a global state of emergency, temporary, of course, But then the question is, it goes back to its antiquity. I mean, it's the kind of things we've seen with ATIP, the TTSA have published and things like that. They predate the modern era by not just decades, probably longer. I mean, there's some very, very good reports from World War II, even predating that. I mean, in 1930, the Swedish Army Air Force carried out the first aerial interception of the Ghost rockets that Klaas Svaan has studied, and some of the descriptions, like cylindrical shaped white objects, things like that. It's the Tic Tacs. Now, presumably, if these are projections, we didn't invent this technology, whether it's an anti-gravity craft or whether it's some kind of hologram, before we invented piston engine aeroplanes, surely. And then you can push it back even further into the pre-photography era, the Nuremberg invasion. There's even cave paintings thousands of years old that have grey aliens and indeed flying saucer-like structures within them. There's a famous wall painting in, I think it's South Africa, that shows what looks like flying saucer-like structures, and underneath you see human figures running, as if this is it's very odd.
There's a type of technology which I believe has been rolled out in China and shown to display three-dimensional things in displays purposes, and they fire microwaves. And I believe in some cases lasers, which are not always visible. But they'll fire two lasers at a point, and the point that they hit actually charges the oxygen molecules or something like that enough so that they release photons, so they become lit. They give off light, and it's a form of plasma. But I mean, basically, if you scan the microwaves like a laser beam, if you scan the image that you want and you scan it with enough power, you can create the three-dimensional spots of light will appear. So you can't see the beams, but you see the resultant.
Spots.
You see the resultant.
I've seen those demonstrated. Yeah.
Yes.
I saw them demonstrate at Thorpe Park. They had them in Thorpe Park like a long time ago. And this is perfectly possible.
Yeah. So there's that sort of technology, which is kind of only just starting to come around now. And I mean, I remember hearing about this type of technology the military were trying to develop. Not a lot said about it, but they used to call it the voice of God.
Oh, yes. I remember that.
And it was designed to kind of project out some sort of radio waves or something, which would get into people's brains and be turned into like a very powerful voice, which you could then speak to people in a language, and sort of get them to put down their weapons because they believed they were hearing the voice of God, or maybe even seeing an illusion of God,
Well, I mean,
beeping,
that
beaming it.
that's even going as far as to say they're, the technology that they have with electric weapon stocking. I mean, that's pretty much down the same sort of scenario, using frequencies to project these frequencies that will get into your friggin' head and make you think anything.
Yep.
This is
And
actually
yeah.
it's coming out of medical. I mean, medical research is already coming up with experimental hearing aids that are very, very
Well,
good
I mean,
because they actually
look at
they
James.
buy.
Look at the case of James Walbert in Kansas City. I mean, he went to all the way to the Supreme Court and fought it. He was claiming that he was being stalked by electric weapons, and he actually got the backing of the Kansas City governor who backed him, and he actually won in court.
I can well
And
believe it. Yeah, I
yeah,
can
so
well.
I mean,
Yeah, I know people who claim that they themselves are the victims of these. I know them quite well, and I'm inclined to believe them from interacting with them. And this technology does exist. I mean, it's even in the public domain in the form
yeah,
of these medical technology in terms of these
mhm,
hearing aids that actually bypass your ear.
Mm.
And so if your ear is damaged in some way and it makes you deaf, you can actually bypass that directly to the brain. And of course, these plowshares are inevitably going to be beaten into swords, like all technology is at some
mm,
point. And indeed, it's quite likely that the military-industrial complex even has more advanced stuff they're keeping quiet. Um,
well,
Would
I
anybody
mean,
like to see an example of what we're talking about? Because it's one thing for us to talk the talk, but
mhm.
would you like to see the walk? Because here
of
it is. I
course,
found it.
of
Yeah, let's
course.
have a look. Right,
Okay, here we go. Here we go.
here we go. Right,
Wow.
Wow,
mid-air. It has
wow.
no screen. It
No
literally
screen at
appears.
all,
Yeah,
man.
It
Wow,
appears in thin air.
wow.
that's a remarkable image. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a remarkable.
Wow, look at that.
Okay, let's bring it up so you can see.
Wow.
Look,
Holy crap, eh?
who needs drones? Who needs little mini drones flying around when you've got this stuff?
That's incredible.
Yeah.
But there we are. It's called plasma. Plasma, folks.
Plasma,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, right.
They're firing a pulse laser
Mm-hmm.
which reflects and focuses the laser into specific points, which plasmarizes the air.
Wow.
That
Yeah.
is remarkable. I didn't.
That is incredible.
Yeah. I'm not. That's. I was thinking when I was thinking of Thorpe Park. It wasn't this I was seeing. It was something else.
Yeah.
This is something different.
Wow. Yeah, that is. That's incredible.
Now this is just like basic level stuff, and you can imagine the military is well ahead of this.
Well, I can immediately see the defense,
Yeah.
the defense potential for something like this. Just imagine what it could be used for in terms of a weapon of war, in terms of psychological warfare, and I mean, this is not unlike the Project Bluebeam that was theorized by this. I think he's a Canadian actually, who first tried to come out with this idea, and later he died in a police cell, I believe, with a heart attack.
Imagine that, eh? A heart attack.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
probably a 9mm heart attack to the back of his head. But you see, he did say that there was a technology invented to create realistic images in the sky, using, I don't know what the exact details were, but the various governments had planned to use it to sort of fake the second coming of Jesus, or in the Middle East, in the Muslim world, they could fake something the eschaton of the Islamic world, the arrival of the Mahdi or whatever, and this would include like voice to skull technology. In other words, including sound as well. It's not just sound, vision, but sound.
You could
People would hear,
actually
yeah.
you could actually show up somewhere and not actually be there. I met you.
Yeah.
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 There was that God, it's even like they had Michael Jackson. Do you remember? There was a hologram of Michael Jackson,
Yeah.
this was after he died,
Mm-hmm.
and you saw him like dancing on this stage, and it looked so real.
Well, I mean, you look at the technology with film too, right? I mean, they're able to plant people who are long gone on film. Well, not film, but on the screen now, and it looks like a real person. Like they're still with us. It's just incredible what we're able to do.
They did that with Carrie Fisher, didn't they? In
Yeah,
on the new
I
Star Wars film. And
remember like
if I didn't
20
know she was dead, I would have thought that was really her.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember 20 years ago going to a party and a van pulled up with these guys and they said, "Oh, do you mind if we test our new sort of stuff we've got? We got some laser displays." And we said, "Oh yeah, sure, you know." And they
Yeah.
said, "Yeah, we just thought like because you're in a party, you wouldn't mind us sort of testing it." And we said, "Okay, yeah." And they was like, "Well, what sort of power have you got?" And they said, "Like, it was 20-watt lasers." It was like a little box like this, right?
Wow.
Tiny little box. They just put it
Mhm.
on a tripod, lifted it up in the air, pointed it in the sky, got out a few laptops, fired it up. Then they were firing just basic shapes, and then they were doing television in the sky, hitting the clouds and projecting television onto clouds,
Wow.
and it was going miles, you know. And it was like, you know, this was just tiny technology, you know, just like a box this size that was projecting images onto the clouds, you know. And this was a publicly available technology. If you had the money to buy it, if you were like a party or a festival organizer or into, you know, advertising graphics or things like this, you could buy this stuff 20 years ago, you know, off the shelf materials if you knew your stuff. What would the military have? 20 watts. They deal in megawatts.
Mhm.
Their lasers are megawatts. Those things that they have, you know, like they have a big aircraft like a 747 with a
Mhm.
chemical laser in it that's supposed to be able to lock onto a missile and fire megawatts of power. Yeah, you imagine if that had been adapted. So instead of being 20 watts, you know, producing a sort of like half-baked image to being megawatts, making plasma appear, maybe you could make huge city-sized saucers appear, you know. You could make all sorts of things appear, you know, with the right technology, with the right power. Just saying.
So is this what's really happening when we're experiencing UFO?
I
Well,
don't think so. Not with the frequency that it goes
Yeah,
on. No.
yeah,
yeah, the behaviour as well as the antiquity of the phenomenon leads. It doesn't explain the entire phenomenon. I
yeah.
know there are some researchers that actually claim it does. It's even quite a fashionable idea now, but it doesn't. However, it's the idea that at some point someone might have this idea to use this technology on the population is perfectly feasible. For example, if for example there are the drive. I mean, politics today. There's no doubt. I've talked about this many times. There's a drive towards greater internationalism and authoritarianism. Now, there's various different methods that this agenda uses. They seem to be backfiring at the moment. Now, if they're desperate enough and if they're willing to like double or quits, go for broke, this could be the last card. I just use that word again, but it's such a good phrase. That's 21 years ago, Carol Rosin brought it up in Washington D.C. The last card would be evil aliens. I mean, they could create a believable threat with various like false flag attacks and these images, and then the cry would go out. I think it would be like what Ronald Reagan said: we must put our differences aside and unite when faced with a threat beyond our world.
I mean, if what's the realistic view on that? I mean, do you really think that everyone's going to put everything aside and team up? I
If
mean,
if they're frightened enough, they would.
yeah, but I mean, you take a look at this pandemic that we had, and you know, instead of working together, you know, it was no, we're gonna you know devise a vaccine before they devise a vaccine. You know, it's like instead of working together, they worked against each other with this whole thing, and we could have you know, we could have taken care of it a lot sooner, maybe. I don't know. But I mean, you put that into perspective of something much larger as an invasion, if not, you know, I don't know. I find I really find it difficult, even so, that we would work together.
Well, I think like hopefully we wouldn't. I mean, hopefully there would be some kind of backlash against it that wouldn't work. It's just this. I think the plan. I mean, they were actually. Where are the documents? I think it was like a report from Iron Mountain, which was supposedly a hoax, and various other documents. But they're they're obviously inspired by real. They're real books by people like Zbigniew Brzezinski that talk about the same thing. They talk about how you can control millions of people mentally to make them behave in a certain way, including making them uniting them behind a particular cause in order to achieve a political agenda. In order to drive them towards the agenda that you want.
Look at Hitler. Hitler was able to do that.
Yeah, it started even before he took power. The burning of the Reichstag, which is very suspicious. I think there's others such as 9/11 and events like that achieved this, even if it was only temporary and didn't work as well as they hoped.
Yeah,
it did have a huge effect, and I think that if they were really desperate enough and they had nowhere else to go and they'd used up all their other ideas, aliens would be perhaps something they would bring forward. I mean, Dr. Stephen Greer, I don't agree with everything he says, but I think he's got a point when it comes to this issue.
Ben or Matt, can you fill my glass for me, please?
No, I was going to say, if you let me fill, if I can fill my glass, I will show you some more magic.
Go for it. Go for it.
I've got a Welsh coffee bag, which is nice. Yeah.
But I mean, well, let me ask you, Ben. I mean, realistically, out of everything that we've experienced over the years, what would you say is the percentage, if there is one, of this being extraterrestrial? These encounters being extraterrestrial?
I'd say the majority.
Really?
Yeah. The majority don't fit into the pattern of, for example, an experimental aircraft. And things like that. There are experimental aircrafts in the sky. They've been spotted. There's the famous flying triangles. Now, I'm not referring in this case to the ones which are sometimes seen hovering over in the way that the flying saucers do. But there was a famous incident from an oil rig where a man saw an RAF tanker, like a tanker aircraft, escorting it was obviously an aeroplane with aerofoils. But it was triangular shaped, and what I believe that to be is probably the latest generation of spy plane or strike aircraft that's maybe based at Area 51 or somewhere like that. I think those things do exist. There's even an instance where in there was actually a temporary airway created with it was above up to 60,000 feet, I think they were, which is like the very highest altitude that most aircraft fly. Concorde could fly that high, not many others. But this was temporarily created between Area 51 and the west coast of the United States. And this was obviously because they wanted to deploy an aeroplane, which was top secret. And all the plane spotters from miles around came to that location to try and get a glimpse of this thing. But it was flying at night. It was flying no light. It was obviously didn't have any running lights or anything like that. It was an altitude above normal air traffic, and they didn't get a chance to see it. But people have reported strange airplanes, and indeed.
And what a great way! If you make them look over here, you can operate over here in complete secrecy. Let's set up an area of space, and we say, don't go there, because don't fly there, because we're going to be testing something, and then everyone flocks there, and you go and do it off the East Coast near New York.
Yeah, that could be what they did. They actually they were deploying the aircraft somewhere else, and they and maybe they wanted to get all the plane spotters, or get as many plane spotters as possible to a different airway. It could be it was something like that. There's actually an idea. It's quite fashionable nowadays that the modern UFO phenomenon is effectively something like that. This is Mark Pilkington's thesis in his book Mirage Men. It doesn't make sense. I mean, it's doesn't quite fit though. I mean, the problem with drawing people's attention towards something with the ultimate objective of deflecting it away is that it could backfire very badly. It's the sort of thing that probably if you really did have that kind of situation, such as in the development of the U-2 spy plane, for example, and the SR-71, you'd just do it and not tell anyone. That's the thing.
They do it every night and don't tell anybody. You know, this is the
Yeah.
whole
Yeah,
point. I mean,
yeah.
why make a big feature saying, "Oh, you know, hang on, don't be over this area"? I mean, unless of course they're doing something that's so wide scale, maybe like pumping a load of energy into the atmosphere that it could actually knock other aircraft out of the sky.
Yeah.
But I think flying an aircraft in that area, no. I think possibly doing something like a massive energy weapon, you know, which is what they maybe they don't want people around when they're doing that, perhaps, you know, knock things out of the sky. Hmm.
Well, let me ask you, Matt, because we heard from Ben. I mean, what do you think? In your mind, your way of thinking, out of all the experiences that we've had, the encounters, blah blah blah. What do you think the percentage of these sightings being extraterrestrial?
Oh, sorry, me? I thought you
Yeah.
asked Ben then.
Sorry,
Oh,
Matt.
sorry, I was
Matt,
waiting for Ben to start.
Sorry, go ahead, mate.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I think any UFO researcher, myself included, will tell you that people often go off a bit half-cocked, you know, and you look at the footage, you look at the evidence, and you say, well, there's probably a rational explanation for this one, or, you know, you can identify it. A lot of the time, people are not very happy having things identified. They want it to be more than it
Yeah.
actually is. But that's the reality, is that it's a low proportion. But the low proportion still allows for there to be some interesting things you just cannot say what they are. So I would imagine it's probably in the percent, you know, of reports. You know, like 1 or 2% of reports might actually be more interesting and worthy of looking into.
Further, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, the military are the best people to be doing this stuff. You know, we as ufologists, we are very much, you know, boots on the ground, talking
Mhm.
about stories. You know,
Yep.
and the military are the people that should be doing this stuff, and I would imagine they do this stuff. So, you know, we rely on them to sort of come forward and tell us the truth one day, and that's what I'm hoping for. So, you know, we can all talk and conjecture about things till we're blue in the face. You know, alien abductions, yeah, great, but you know, where's the aliens? We haven't got a
Mm.
body. You know, where is it? You know, we've got a lot of stories, and ufology is all about stories. You know, we're all waiting for that kind of final proof. I mean, I'm quite comfortable. I've seen things that can't be explained, but you can't tell most of the public that, because unless they've had a weird experience, unless they've seen a ghost, they're not going to believe in ghosts. Unless they've seen a UFO, they're not going to believe in UFOs. You know, unless they've been abducted by an alien, they're not going to believe in
Mm.
abductions
Yeah.
by aliens. So it's a hard sell. It's a
Mhm.
very hard sell, and we do need the military to, you know, tell the truth on this one. We live in hope, but yeah.
Do you guys? Sorry. Okay. Go ahead, Ben.
I was just going to add that the kind of hearing we had the other day is probably not going to be the only one. There may well be others. There may be a Senate hearing as well. It's possible other countries will get involved, and then because there is a distinct shift. There's a seismic shift in the relationship between the mainstream and the UFO phenomenon, which
Mm.
began in December 2017, and literally a 70-year and 6-month or 5-month policy came to an end very suddenly. There must be a reason for that. I don't believe that would happen for no reason. No, the problem is, yeah, the transparency from the state is important, because basically, whether we want it or not, they're there and they are controlling things. The problem that Matthew actually brought up about hearsay is an important one, because literally, if you were working on some kind of secret government project, doing autopsies on aliens or
Mhm.
back engineering flying saucers, and you managed to get out of that, you managed to go renegade,
Mhm.
the chances are you wouldn't have any physical evidence. You wouldn't have any documentary evidence. You probably would just have your own memories, which you would relate to people the way Bob Lazar has done. So I understand a lot of people who say things like, well, Bob Lazar needs to he needs to put up or shut up. I understand the people who say that. And unfortunately, he cannot. He can never prove his story
How?
independently.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How?
it's possible that someday there will be some kind of revelation, some kind of declassification, which will vindicate him. Until that day happens, then unfortunately he's in a very, very tricky. If he is telling the truth, then he's in a very, very tricky position. And he's not alone. I mean, anyone in that, it's unfortunately that's all people can do for now.
Well, he's damned if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't. So, yeah, it's unfortunate for his sake, though. But I mean, sorry, Lazar needs to wind his neck in. Wind his neck in. Oh, that's funny. Okay, so the technology that what a lot of us have witnessed. I mean, is this like, is it possibly man-made? I mean, do we have that sort of technology handy, do you think?
It's quite likely we do.
Anti-gravity, I think,
Yeah.
possibly,
Yeah.
because I mean, that we've been what holds us here on the earth.
Mhm.
What actually holds us here. We don't know. The public at large don't know what that process is. I mean, you're told, well, it's a large body, has a gravitational field. So if you have something very large like the Earth, it has a gravitational field, but they don't know what it is.
Yeah.
They think they know what gravitational waves are, and they're
Mhm.
talking about this now in physics. So we know what the gravitational waves are. Well, okay, then what do you know about sound? I mean, you get noise cancelling headphones, yeah. So if you get like a positive sound and a positive sound, and you supply this exact same negative sound and a negative sound, you cancel it out.
Mhm.
So if you've got a wave, if gravity is a wave, and they're saying it's a wave, if you can supply the negative of that wave, then it's nullified. You now have anti-gravity. Now you've only got to use a small amount of power to push yourself off,
Yeah.
because you'll be floating. So, I mean, it might sound far-fetched, that we won't have this now, but I think when this technology finally comes out and people are made aware of it, it'll be treated no differently. They're like, oh, look, a mobile phone. Oh, wow, this is like magic technology. But I mean, the moment it's shown, this is how you do it, here's how it works, then it's going to be no more magic than anything else we've seen. Laser pens, LEDs, LED torches, mobile phones. It's going to be exactly the same as that. But have the military got hold of this? I think they have. I think they have, and they've been playing with this stuff for years, and they just cannot bring themselves to talk about it. They cannot bring themselves to bring it out, and a lot of the militaries have been working on this stuff secretly behind the scenes. But whether or not do they even want to use it in conventional warfare? Because once you show it, you kind of give it away. We know we're at least 20. Well, this was in the 90s. We were 25 years behind on stealth technology. What they were flying around, the SR-71 had slight stealth technology and was very interesting. But then you had the F-117A and the B-2 stealth bomber. Those were flown for 25, 30 years before anyone ever knew they were there. But these were battlefield technologies which were meant to be mass produced to be used on the battlefield. I don't think that this stuff that they've got, the black budget stuff with stealth, with anti-gravity, is meant for battlefield. Because if they bring it out in the battlefield, they're going to train the troops to use it, and if they train the troops to use it, the secret's out. They've got something that is so off the level. It's kind of just out there so much that they protect it with deadly force. Anyone that talks about it, bullet back of the head. It's not dealt with like you normally deal with stuff. This is just so off in a different realm that it has been able to be kept secret for a long time and wouldn't be used in the battlefield, although a lot of countries are kind of catching up, and I think China's catching up on a lot of stuff, and this is the problem. I think America might be a bit worried about breakthrough technologies from China because they're getting very good on the laser stuff, and they're moving forward in so many other realms. Maybe America's like, well, we've got to talk about some of this stuff because pretty soon we're going to have to use it in a battlefield scenario. And it's that battlefield scenario. That's what holds them back from talking about it, because they don't want to show their trump cards. Not use it, maybe trump's the wrong word. They don't want to show their ace cards, because this stuff is not really ready for rolling out in the battlefield. They've got it. They know how it works. It works. They've got it. It's secret. They fly around in it. They're playing with it. But they don't want every single person who works in a battlefield knowing about it. And they know once it gets to that level where they start showing people how to use it and training them on it, and then that's it. It's game over. I mean, like, you might as well just put it on the evening news, and they don't want it made ready for battlefield. That's why we don't hear about it.
Has television and movies let the cat out of the bag, do you think, with some of the technology? Have you, anything
Well,
from the
Independence Day was a documentary, as we all know. So
yeah.
Yeah. Hello, Rick. How you doing? The scientists, you ask a scientist today, most of them in the mainstream, they'll just say, well, anti-gravity is impossible because we haven't defined gravity even by its quantum nature, which in other words, they don't know how it works. There's no particle they know that it exists and things like that. However, you don't have to know how something works to use it as a force. As you don't have to. A force of nature can be harnessed without knowledge of how it operates. There are still many mysteries associated with electricity. We don't know everything about electricity. It doesn't stop us using it to fuel our civilization.
Mhm.
And the idea that gravity could be controlled the way that Matthew was stating, simply cancelling out one wave with another, that was actually done very much in the mid-20th century. And indeed, even a bit earlier, people like Thomas Townsend Brown and people like that were working on electrogravitics. This then just suddenly stopped. It stopped. Nick Cook, in his Awakening, what's it called? Awakening to Zero Point. Or I can't remember the actual title of the book is, but it's an amazing book because it talks about the very moment he believes it was not. I think it was 1954. Just suddenly, every area of this research stopped, and from then on, we had jet airplanes. And everyone thought that's great, and we had rockets going into space. Gigantic columns of steel and fuel that can chug laboriously up into low Earth orbit and kill people by blowing up on the launch pad and things like that. But if this was done covertly, there's many reasons why it wouldn't necessarily be used on the battlefield for the reasons Matt has stated, but also for others. It's the implications of the awareness of this.
Yeah.
So the technology, once released, for example, there's a major war, and they say, well, we've had anti-gravity since 1954. We've been developing in secret. People then once that war's over, people then ask things like, well, can this technology be adapted for civilian use? For example, you can make a wonderful energy system if you can control gravity. It essentially becomes a source of power. Then therefore we could build engines that don't need petrol, that don't need batteries, and we could all have as much energy as we wanted, and we could heal poverty. We could prevent environmental destruction and things like that, and all other benefits. I actually talk about this in my book, Roswell Rising: A Novel of Disclosure, available at all good bookshops now.
Where's the second one?
It's called Roswell Revealed. Yeah, it's
you don't have there.
Oh, I haven't got it actually with me, but there's also a third one which came out after. This is the second edition, but that's it. Shameless plug over.
That's fine.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. But, the purpose of the purpose of the book, the purpose of writing that book was to. I imagined a fictional scenario in which the things we talk about were actually revealed publicly rather than kept secret. What would happen? How would the world change? And things like that. And I think that the people in high powers are very, very concerned about that. They're concerned about the implications of everyone having as much energy as they want and being able to essentially fly with anti-gravity and things like that. It would transform the geopolitical landscape enormously. Essentially, the oil industry would become obsolete overnight. Now, you just pause for a moment and think, what does that mean? What would that mean for the world order as we know it? And things like that. And I think there's many people, not necessarily with malicious intent, who are just thinking, well, we have to keep the secret, otherwise it's going to turn the world upside down. We could have possibly, India will become a superpower because it's got so much population and resources, things like that. Things like that.
I come to understand that there's this thing called an electric car now.
Yeah,
Oh,
you plug it into the wall. You have to plug it into the wall. Now, what if you had one of those, but you didn't need a battery? You didn't have to plug it in. I mean, you could drive us. You would need lubrication oil and maintenance and things like that. But apart from that, you could just drive as far as you wanted. What would that do to the? What would that do to the price of goods? What the
exactly.
commodities taken off the commodities which currently control those prices will be taken off the market.
Well,
You
I
see what I
mean,
mean?
you're talking about, okay, so most of them use lithium batteries, right? Now they're talking about sulfur lithium batteries, sulfuric lithium batteries that will last up to I think they were saying 100 miles per charge. Or
Well,
sorry,
that's not a lot. That's
I
not a
thought
lot.
1,000 miles per charge. Sorry.
Well, that's more than like a full tank of
Aluminium,
petrol.
aluminium ion as well. That's another one because it's cheaper than lithium and it's
Yeah.
widely available. Aluminium ion.
Yeah.
That's
So
another one.
why
New one.
bother having a petrol diesel tank? Because you could fill your tank up and it wouldn't take you that far. So
No.
why bother having? Why just everyone have an electric car? I mean, obviously, like the electricity is generated at a power station using conventional means. You still have to plug it in every 1,000 miles or so. But once that's taken out of the equation, then the world's your oyster.
Yeah.
There's no need for anyone to be poor. There's no need for anyone to suffer. There's no need for old folk to freeze in winter because they can't afford their. I mean, energy prices is an enormous issue at the moment because it's skyrocketing all over everywhere at the moment.
Inflation, huh?
In October it's going to like hit £600 a month or something. I mean, am I going to have to sit here in my winter jacket all indoors and things like that?
Do we see, and I don't want to venture too much into it because it's fraying off a little bit, but do we see a global recession? Do you guys see that happening?
A self-created global
Yeah.
recession.
Yeah. Do you see that?
The great reset. There
Yeah.
isn't a need for a great reset. It's that it's being organized.
Yeah.
They're making it happen.
Mm.
And yeah, I'm a bit. I mean, what can you say? I mean, like, it's why are we being suppressed like this at a time when we should be sort of like freeing ourselves? And where was all this free nuclear energy that we were told we were going to get? Where you wouldn't even have an electric bill. It's kind of because everything's privatized. So they go, we'll charge you what we want to charge you, and you'll pay it or starve. That's what it's about. It's not about whether they've got free energy. They could have free energy. We could have free energy. A lot of things in the world could be cheap, but they don't want it to be cheap.
No.
They want you to pay through the nose.
I mean, look at a prime example. The net, the World Wide Web, when it first, went mainstream, if you will. And you look at it now. I mean, everything is regulated. Everything is it's social media. It's the big guys like YouTube and Google and Amazon and all that kind of shit. And how many people actually venture in between the lines anymore? I mean, it's almost impossible to find in between the lines now because it's so cluttered with this shit now.
Yeah, and Elon Musk saying we need freedom and transparency on the internet. We're gonna tell you how the algorithm works. That is seen as a revolutionary and almost like no, we can't have this because the control mechanism that wants to control what you see, what you hear, what you're advertised, how you maneuver through society. They don't want this stuff being transparent. That's like WikiLeaks. That's like Julian Assange giving you all the information behind the scenes. They don't want this. No, don't tell people that fuel only costs a cent and we're charging you $2 for it. Don't tell them this. It's like it's a freaking conspiracy. It is a conspiracy.
Well,
Everything in life.
I want some of that happy juice, Matt. Come on.
This is I mean, the thing is, I came to this realization we're being lied to years ago. I mean, it's all the food. You can buy food from like bulk suppliers, like cheap places, and it costs like pennies. And then you go into supermarkets and they put a brand name on it and it's now dollars, And it's because we're being lied to. You can go to countries like India and you can buy things, cars, electronics, and all this stuff for like $50, and it'll be $1,000 over here because it's all bullshit. They don't pay in the same terms. We're being lied to. We're being milked, marketed, inflation. You know, so like your savings don't earn any. You know, they don't mean anything anymore. You know, if you're keeping your money in the bank, like in 2 years' time, it'll be worthless. You know, it doesn't mean, you know, you can't buy anything with it because it's gone down in value. You know, all this bullshit, and people just go for it. They just lap it up. They just, you know, it's and all of that keeps people distracted. You know, why are people going to look at UFOs when they're distracted with like just paying for the food to eat from day to day? They're not interested in UFOs. They're just trying to stay alive.
This is
You know?
this is the problem, isn't it? It's like
Mm.
you know,
It
it's, the problem with the whole disclosure thing is that there doesn't seem to, it's people like us who want this, but the majority of the population are pretty indifferent, for the reasons Matthew said, and also because like, the fact that there's other things, like there's Johnny and Amber, and there's Will Smith slapping Chris Rock, and all these other pieces of irrelevant trivia. In fact, it's quote silent weapons for a quiet war. Keep them distracted by matters of no real importance back on the farm with the other animals. And we are being treated as livestock. I mean, this is the actual the deep state is actually essentially has that attitude towards us. They want to create an authoritarian global state, and we've seen it advance enormously over the last few years. To the point where we are having information controlled quite openly now. They're not even actually pretending. I mean, they're still saying things like fact checking, protecting the public from misinformation. They're trying to make excuses for it. But when the war broke out in Ukraine and the government decided to ban the principal the principal media outlet that tells the Russian side of the story, that is RT. You not ban completely. You can never ban anything completely these days, but you know you have to watch it through a VPN online or something. Or go to an alt text site to see RT now. They're just essentially saying, look, we want to propagandize you. We want to tell you the story of what's happening in this war, and we don't want anyone else. We don't want you hearing the other side. And it's been met with sadly little resistance.
They should have left it on, because then we could have seen just how jokey it was. Because I mean, Russia's telling people literally that this is like, oh, we're helping the Ukrainians. We're helping them because they were all these Nazis taking over their country. We're helping them. You know, I mean, it's jokey. You know, I mean, I think they should leave it.
If we have, well, I would say always leave both sides of every story and let people make their own minds up, because I treat my fellow humans as intelligent adults that are capable of more than one-dimensional thinking. Now, this is the particular climate into which this whole UFO issue has been dumped. It's really in many ways it's a bad time for this to break. But then when is there a good time? When do we ever enjoy even a moment's peace in this world where we can sit down and say, my goodness, there's no crisis going on at the moment? We seem to lurch from one crisis to another. These things just pass like waves of a fever, to quote Adam Curtis.
So I mean, with this growing intensity in terms of information control, I mean, we can almost certainly kiss disclosure goodbye ever.
I thought you were going to say my ass goodbye then. Like, you kiss your own ass goodbye. Leave my ass out of it.
I mean, we'll never get disclosure, will we?
It depends. I mean, for every thesis there is an antithesis. It could be that the very the very desire to rush this information control state into place, and they are rushing. They are definitely taking risks. That particularly dash for the finish line could be its own undoing. So in one level, Steve, I agree with you. This is just like if they're not telling us about how much energy companies, the record-breaking profits that the various gas companies have made, for example, at the same time they're hiking the prices sky high when they have the reserve capital not to do that if they wanted to. If they're keeping quiet about that, why on earth are they going to tell us about little green men from Zeta Reticuli? But on the other hand, sometimes this very danger could be exactly the opportunity we're looking for to end it once and for all. I mean, it could be that really, well, they're basically carrying out the Sun Tzu maneuver. You know, they're acting strong when they're really weak. So the deep state actually is in very, very serious trouble, and the reason they're being so aggressive and bullish right now is because they know they're in trouble, and they're trying desperately to prevent the end of their agenda, their great work of ages. In which case, that's the disclosure would automatically follow. If that process is going on, disclosure would automatically follow. So I think the whole UFO issue now is a litmus test for what's really going on in the world. If we get more and more progress in terms of UFO disclosure, that could be a sign that this happy scenario that I have speculated on is actually real.
Part and parcel. It doesn't come. It doesn't come separate. It's a part of the package.
Yeah, it's impossible to deal with the UFO issue without dealing with other associated issues as well, including false flag terror, politics, and economics of various kinds, because it influences everything.
Absolutely.
I got something for you, right? They were talking about quantum mechanics and what quantum particles were in 1859. They were talking about the backgrounds of quantum theory, you know, Gustav Kirchhoff, you know, they were talking about you know, how particles have you know, sort of atoms and sort of atoms have electrons and things like this, and how they have these strange properties which don't make sense. But nobody'd seen an atom back then. Nobody actually had, you know, physical evidence that these things existed, but they were talking in physics, you know, laboratories. They were talking about semantics of things that they didn't yet know existed, but hypotheticals of how they could possibly. I mean, in 1905, Einstein was talking about the photoelectric effect, you know, about how there are releases of electrons from metals and semiconductors, you know, and how this is part of an action by light, you know, and this is going back, you know, 1913, Niels Bohr was talking about the hydrogen atom, you know, nobody'd even seen it, you know, and then they were talking about quantum realities where things affect each other at a distance, you know, these strange effects, Heisenberg principle, you know, the matrix mechanics, you know, it's kind of like this is like, you know, 1900s, you know, Niels Bohr talking about space-time coordinates and causality are complementary in 1927, you know. In 1940 they had the atomic bomb. Where were all these principles coming from, where at the same time as they were finding the bomb, they were finding other things as well? Because this wasn't just one little thing they found. Oh, look what we've just found. It was just that they managed to get it into a box and blow it up. Yeah, that was what people remember. Something that goes boom. But what about things that are a bit more subtle? What about things that actually do things behind the scenes? Action at a distance. We've all heard about this spooky action at a distance, whereby quantum particles can entangle so that you could have a quantum particle here and you could have one on the other side of the galaxy. And if you've changed the particle here, it changes on the other side of the galaxy. So all things are connected in a way that is beyond time. You know, because we're all told, oh, light takes a long time to travel across the universe. So if we send a message now, in 20 million years, it'll get out to a galaxy out in the No. Quantum reality is beyond time. You change something here, it immediately changes on the other side of the galaxy. They've been talking about this stuff for a long time. How do you talk about this stuff when it's things you haven't even seen, touched, observed, or can experiment on? You know, how can you postulate a thing like that? These people behind the scenes, there's been a lot more going on than we've been made aware of, and I believe that the breakthrough science in this realm has definitely been kept behind the scenes. You know, it's not something. I mean, I've got something I could share with you very quickly, because I like dropping things in that like show people. And this is one, but I'm gonna drop an even better one in a minute. Let's have a look. Right, in Japan, in Tokyo, people were freaked out when they released this. Right, a three-dimensional hologram on the side of a building. Right, it is a display, but it was three-dimensional, and people couldn't believe it. Watch this now. Right, have a look at this. Right. This, right?
Oh, wow.
You know,
oh my god,
yeah,
that's crazy.
and it's three-dimensional. So, like, you know, this is not, you know, your normal type of display. Yeah,
It's not just forced perspective. It is actually
Mm.
a holographic object, a
yeah.
holographic image.
It's 3-dimensional, so people are actually seeing the depth in it.
Goodness,
You know, there we
that
are.
is
It's a
remarkable.
3-dimensional display, but like, you know, project on the side of a building. But that's nothing. I'll show you something else in a bit. I'm going to go and get another beer though, because
Okay.
that's
It's interesting how the people are not wearing the normal like 3D glasses, you know. So
No,
it's
you
not
don't
taking
need to,
advantage
yeah.
of the
they don't need
stereoscopic
it.
effect.
Don't need it, yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen this, right? You can get it in laptops. In fact, I've actually got a camcorder. I've got a camcorder, and when you flip open the screen without a 3D glasses, you see 3D on that screen.
Wow.
It's 3D. Yeah. In fact, I've got two of them. There's this one, right? This is one of them, right? This is one of them. You won't be able to see this, but this is a 3D screen, right? And if you could, can you see this? Can you see this?
You can see. You can see. Yeah, you can see it. Yeah.
It's fading a little bit because you're green screen.
You can kind of see, but the principle is that if you know the distance that the people are going to be standing at, you can see there's two images there.
Yeah.
See there's two images?
Yep. See that.
Yeah. Well, basically, it's like a slit technology that projects things in slits. So that depending on where you're standing, your left eye will get one slit and your right eye will get another.
Another. Yeah.
Right.
So you're sending it out in slits. Yeah. And you'll be able to project 3D out, and as long as they're standing within a certain radius, you know, you'll be able to get a 3D image from that.
And you shot a couple things on Secret Vault with that.
Yeah, I shoot sometimes if I've got time to, because it's hard to shoot with 3D.
Yeah,
you know, I will do some sort of, you know.
You got it propped up on like a helmet, right?
No, I put it on my gimbal.
Yeah. Oh, your gimbal, okay.
Yeah, the trouble with 3D is it's quite disconcerting if you move too quickly.
So
you really do have to have that very slow kind of panning and slow. It, you know, otherwise you lose the effect. So I put it on a gimbal. But anyway,
I found that very strange.
More beer.
Maybe I'm thinking about a 360. You had a 360. Maybe it's a 360 camera that you had.
My sock.
That's it. There we go.
When I pull the sock off, then you have the 360 camera, and you can see in all directions.
Yes,
in every direction.
That's what I was
all at once. Yeah,
that's what I was thinking about. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I mean, what you mentioned about the quantum, the quantum entanglement effect is. That would make the most marvelous communication system if we could get it to work, because we would be able to talk. We wouldn't have to. This thing which SETI does, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, where they're beaming lights, as you just said, it takes 20 million years to have a conversation, say hello.
Yeah.
That you could literally pick up a phone and talk to someone in a distant galaxy with that
immediately.
By the way, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence is a silly effort to investigate, as the late great Stanton Friedman called it. It's an absolute
radio waves is the old school. Yeah,
it is some ironic nonsense. I mean, it's one of the saddest and stupidest ironies imaginable. I've done an entire presentation on this, which I perform at conferences and things. Literally, they point in the distant stars. They're looking for something in distant stars, which is already here on Earth with us. There could even be flying saucers above the radio telescopes where they're scanning some star 10 light years away, seeing if there's a signal coming from it. I mean, Carl Sagan was involved in all this, and he was weird. The statements he made about UFOs were incredibly weird. He seemed like he never really changed his position in all his entire career, which I thought was a bit odd. So you know, SETI it's getting a lot of money, and they're building these telescopes and things like that. Somewhere out there, there's an intelligent civilization. We just know if we could only contact it, we can pick up a signal, then we know it was intelligent and it's out there. Well, it's not out there; it's here. It's found us. It's found us a long time ago, and it's here with us. And that's the universe we live in. We live in a living universe.
So when you say a long time ago, I mean, what are we talking here? What are your thoughts on that? You know, a long time ago, what are we talking about?
I mean, can we find a beginning to this phenomenon where we can say, well, it started there? I don't know if we can. I mean, it's certainly it was present in prehistoric times.
Could there be Could they be the result of the dinosaur extinction?
Well, there's people who've come up with some intriguing evidence that humans as a species were, and we were actually engineered. We were actually the product of some kind of genetic engineering
Yeah.
experiment. There are certain, for example, like although we are primates and we have a lot of biological similarities to the great apes, there are some distinct differences. For example, we walk upright. Now, apes in the past have walked upright. In a few million years ago, there were numerous apes like Lucy, that walked upright. Now there are. Now there's only one we know. Well, there's Bigfoot as well, but that's another story. But we have we have skin. When we have no, apart from like on certain parts of our body, like the tops of our heads, we don't have any fur. In the case of us, we don't even have them there. But we are naked. We have no body, very little body hair. Instead, we have a subcutaneous layer of fat under our skin, which chimps and gorillas don't have. They have fur all over their bodies. Now, our skin is actually much more like that of a pig than an ape. And we also have these strange. We have the flat feet, of course, are unique in the animal.
You're saying
kingdom.
we were crossbred?
Well, this is the interesting thing. If we've evolved something that's unique within the primates. Another thing is our nose points. We have nose with nostrils that point downwards. Which actually allows us to put our heads underwater without our airways flooding to a shallow depth. When you see chimps and gorillas crossing a river, for example, wading across a river, they're very careful not to get their heads underwater because their nostrils face forwards. The moment their head goes under the water, their airway floods and they risk drowning. We can actually put our heads under the water and we actually trap a bubble of air in our upper nasal passages. So again, why is that? I mean, do we have an aquatic past? Is it something that was bred into us by some kind of by intergalactic breeders? This is because there are legends across the world in cultures from all four corners of the earth where they talk about humans having some kind of interaction in the ancient past with extraterrestrials, and this does sometimes involve sex and reproduction. In Genesis chapter 12, it says that the gods came down, saw the daughters of men, saw that they were fair, took of them many wives, who gave them many heirs, who became the wise men of renown, which indicates there is the ruling classes of the past were essentially alien human hybrids. There's also legends which talk about how humans were bred from some interactions with the gods, or that we essentially were created by the gods in some way or another. Pigs don't have flat feet. Humans have flat feet, Rick. They're actually unique in the animal kingdom, our feet. But that's because we walk upright. But why do we walk upright? Right? Why do we have pig-like skin? Why do we have all these other things that we seem to have developed a level of intelligence way above what will be necessary for our evolution? It's all these little questions that lead me to believe that if someone else was involved in this, some other intelligence was involved in our evolution. What was it? Where did it come from? Is it still here? And seeing as what we call UFOs and aliens go back into prehistoric times, I believe that maybe they were the ones who did it.
Quite possibly. And I mean, look at, when we look at surgeries and stuff like that, they tend to use and like pig organs and stuff like that. And what is it with skin transfers now? They use pig membranes and skin. So, I mean, not that it works all the time, but out of any, why don't they use monkey?
That's an important point. Yeah, I mean,
why don't they use the monkey?
I'm not like a biblical creationist, but I do question the whole evolution thing. I do. Matthew's muted. All right.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm
he's
muted.
muted.
I was going to say the reason they use pigs because they use mice as well. They could use monkeys. They could use any animal. They can use horses, and they put the DNA in them, and then they can basically produce a clone of that animal with a new DNA, and then that can be transplanted into a human, and it doesn't reject. So yeah, I think pigs are a good one because they're easy to kind of manage, whereas monkeys not so much. They're just monkeys are little bastards, so they're much harder to control. You know, pigs are just happy as long as you give them some food and stick them in a corner. They'll just eat all day and just like grow your transplantable organs
So,
till the cows come home.
so that's where some of us get those genes from, right? Eating all day long.
Right, hey, I got something for you. I want, and Ben, you probably know this, but you would probably be like, oh yeah, cool, right? You want to know how far stealth technology has gone, and this is publicly available, right? This is only what they want you to know publicly, right? So they're talking about these systems. Would you like to see? Would you like to see a
let's do it.
stealth tank?
So
Oh, let's
is
see
this?
it.
Oh, I think I might have seen this, but go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah. Right, hang on then. Let me. What have I got to do? Share. Hang on. Share screen. Share. I watch this. Right. Okay. Ready. Here we go. This is a tank that has scales on the side, and each scale is a little television that projects not only light but heat. Okay. So that's a tank. You can see. Right. Can you see it's a tank?
Yeah.
Oh no, it's not a tank. It's now disappeared. Because it's blending in with its background. Okay. Okay, it blends in because you can put this on ships, you can put it on aircraft, you can put it on tanks. Okay. Okay, and these little part things here can actually allow the tank to change shape and look, take the shape of a car or a bike.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you think that's a tank, right? So you pull up to it and you think, oh, that's a tank, look. Yeah. And then you know, it can even have writing on the side of it, but you can have it turn it into a car, and it just drives along, you know, and becomes a car.
It's literally relaying light rays from the other side of it.
Yes,
It's actually relaying them around the object and projecting them forward. And of course, that makes it effectively, it's a form of invisibility. But also, of course, like it could project other things as well as the light rays on the other side of it, and therefore, it could make it look like anything it wants to look like. It's are these quasi crystals?
Well, they are projecting heat and light, you know, out.
Yeah.
So they're kind of they're infrared emitters, but they're light emitters as well, you know. So it's infrared is only just light on a different frequency. It's a lower frequency than we observe. So, you know, all you have to do is shift the frequency down, and you've got a light emitter, you've got an infrared emitter. If you shift the frequency up, you'd have a radio emitter. So
it's
yeah,
that really is like that is remarkable, and that is real stealth technology. That is, I mean,
and this is what they're prepared to let the public know they've got. Right, I've heard stories. Now this might be fanciful, but I've heard stories about. Now here we are. There's another one, right? I've heard stories about tanks pulling up in the desert, and people can hear them. And then somebody's got out of an invisible hatch and just climbed out and sort of gone down across the body of the tank. You know, this weird, wacky stories like that. But here we are. Here's something that got spotted at RAF Wharton. I mean, I don't know whether people were meant to see this. What's that?
It's some kind of. It looks like it's upside down. Some kind of fighter jet upside down. Well, or is it? It's just made to look like that. I don't know. I mean, you see, this could explain why you get like the helicopters that vanish. You know.
I know why they're driving that along. Maybe they didn't know there was anybody with cameras at the time. But the thing is, they've got a very, very sophisticated radar signature scanner that can tell the radar signature of things. So they're probably taking it along to that scanning platform and then scanning it to see how its radar signature is. But the thing is, that's quite an advanced bit of design there. What you know? I mean,
the fact that it's upside down leads me to believe it is like a radar target. It may not. It may just be a mock-up. I mean, the SR-71 at Area 51 was upside down like that when it was tested. But that's curious. It's curious that that's a curious thing to do. I mean, God knows what they're. I mean, it'd be fun if people were watching it like with their cameras and that suddenly sort of like faded and disappeared. Wouldn't that be remarkable? That would indicate, you know, they are actually trying some of this this projection technology.
Yeah, but this is in the UK, and I don't remember the UK having stealth technology. Do you?
No, but then neither did anyone in the United States until
Yeah.
1989.
Yeah.
Even though it was developed from the mid 70s, like the SR-71 and the B2.
Yeah.
Mm.
They were developed from the mid 1970s.
That's
Yeah.
insane, man. And the back part, the back part that's exposed. I mean, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Some
Is
sort
that
of
like it's got a double tailplane? Yeah.
yeah.
No, I don't. No, that's not a.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe someone who knows more about airplanes than me could tell us, but I've not seen one
Yeah.
like that before.
Yeah. Exactly.
It
That's
doesn't.
pretty intriguing.
So there we go. I'm just saying,
Wow.
there's a lot of things that, you know, it's almost in plain sight. If you happen to be in the right place at the right time, you'll see what they don't want you to see. But just somebody had a very good camera on that occasion. Mm.
Somebody will-
It's lucky, weren't they? Which lucky. Yeah, they were just very, very lucky.
It's good lucky, man. If that wasn't supposed to be seen, that's awfully awesome, man. I mean
Yeah.
that is cool.
So
And-
I mean, you can only imagine if that's what I mean. It's out in the daylight for a start, right? It's in the daylight,
Yeah.
and like if they're like, you know, hoping somebody doesn't see it, but somebody accidentally sees it, what do they do behind closed doors? I mean, this is just the battlefield ready. This is what we don't mind if you kind of know, because we're already rolling it out in the battlefield. What sort of shit do they have in the background? I mean, this stuff is going to be so advanced, you probably won't even know what it won't look like. You know, it might be circular. It might be an unusual shape. It probably won't have a cockpit. It's going to be unmanned. You know,
where's that base located in Wyerton? Where's that located?
Wharton is in Lancashire near Blackpool, isn't it?
Okay.
All right, I was actually near that area not long ago.
Oh,
Yeah,
Just the weekend I was in that area.
I've been up there where this guy with the camera is actually looking, and they had a lot of triangular sightings like out of there. You know, 10, 15 years ago, there was a lot of triangular sightings.
Yeah.
And you know, they were denying it, but it's British Aerospace's test facility. It's where they design and test things. So it's not a normal air base. It's where they're playing with stuff, and things were flying out at night, and people saying that looks weird, you know, and then triangular things were spotted in the sky, and you know,
yeah.
you can't imagine that they would do this so close to the public that people could see what was going on, but you know, they got to do it from somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean,
if
I've
so,
heard they test this stuff out in the desert in Oman and places like that, and the reason
Oh.
they do it out there is because they don't want people seeing it.
It's
You know?
remote, yeah. It's remote, and
Yeah.
it's.
and I mean,
discreet.
even so, I mean, if they did want people to see it, what's the point? Is it diversion? What?
Maybe Britain, you know, is developing its own stealth aircraft like that. You know,
It's yeah.
But
all this,
we don't know about this, but you know, maybe somebody just was at the right place at the right time.
Interesting.
yeah, it could be unintentional. I mean, the deep state, the whatever you want to call them, the Illuminati. You know, they're often people in the conspiratorial circles project onto them almost godlike powers. You know, they're almost like magic and infallible, omnipotent, and omniscient. No, they make mistakes. They get things wrong. They are fallible.
Yeah, I mean, somebody said, "Is this the new BAE Tempest?" And I just typed in Tempest, and yes, I have now got photos of Tempest, and it looks very much like what I'm seeing.
Mhm.
But guess when it's planned for introduction?
2030?
Bit more,
2040? 35?
2035.
Wow.
That's more than a decade away.
Jesus.
This is technology that's not going to be flying until 2035, and you've just seen a sneaky.
Funnily enough, there's a plane that's just been spotted at Area 51, and obviously it was put out there because it was put out there for so long that it probably was intentional, and it's a new type of aircraft no one's seen before. So
That's incredible.
I'll have to go to bed soon, guys.
Yeah, we're gonna cut this because I really like to do a part 2 to this, guys.
Anytime, be glad to.
Expand this a little bit and
Mhm.
bring some other voices on, because this was fun. Thanks guys for doing this, man. Really,
No
Oh, you're very
problem.
welcome. Thanks for inviting me, Steve. It's been great.
and just
It's nice. It's nice to excite the imagination, just get people's interest levels up, saying like, what ifs, and
Yeah.
we don't always have answers, but asking what if is I think exciting.
Get your links out there, because I mean this is going to be playing live on live radio on Sunday. So
Cool.
so the listeners, let them know how they can find you guys.
Well, for me, it's a panel, HPANWO, Hospital Porters Against the New World Order. I've got multiple websites there. There's my book, of course, and its sequels, which you can get a hold of. If you like this program, I think you'll love this book.
I think
I love it.
I think it's
Thanks,
they remember it more when you sing it. They go, Hospital Porters Against the New World Order. Right. If you remember how to sing it like that, you'll
Hospital. Yeah, I'll have to come up with a jingle. Yeah.
Hospital Porters Against the New World Order. Yes. Right. So yeah. Sorry.
And Matt, how can they find you?
Well, I'm just on YouTube is the best way, and you don't see me dealing with this stuff a lot, the UFO thing. I did delve into it a bit the other day, but yeah, just check out The Secret Vault, and it's one word, no spaces. So if you type that into YouTube, The Secret Vault with no spaces, then you can only get to one place, because if you were to type the or secret or vault, or combinations of those things, you'd get all sorts of other pages. But if you just type in The Secret Vault without spaces, you can only end up in one place.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Once again, thanks a lot, guys. Really enjoyed it. And
You're welcome, Steve.
Look forward to the next time. Take care, guys.
Yeah, definitely. Take care. Bye-bye.
Good night, all.
Nanu.
No. Thanks for everyone for listening and for posting in chat.
Live long and prosper, and maybe your babies not walk backwards.
And like, subscribe, and whatever else. Thanks, guys. Love your comment. Good night.
Cheers.